Ladies and gentlemen, this is CVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and all welcome aboard the Eastern Express. Now, in a historic shift, Ukraine is preparing to legalize dual citizenship in a bid to reconnect with its global diaspora and rebuild the nation. The move comes as millions of Ukrainians remain abroad, displaced by Russia's aggression and drawn by opportunities elsewhere. By allowing multiple nationalities, Kyiv hopes to strengthen national identity, encourage return migration, and fuel post-war recovery. Let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Previously impossible in the eyes of Ukrainian law, dual citizenship will likely soon become a reality for Ukrainians all over the world. A bill which makes obtaining dual or multiple citizenship has been approved by the government in Kyiv. While the proposed legislation hasn't entered law yet, as it still has to be approved by President Volodymyr Zelensky, that step is seen as nothing more than a formality, given that the president himself submitted the bill last summer. Letting Ukrainians hold dual citizenship, however, isn't the main reason behind the move. Ukrainian Minister for National Unity Oleksiy Chernyshov says the legislation is meant as a motivator for Ukrainians living abroad to come back home. Not only that, but the soon-to-be law aims to unite Ukrainians around the globe, those who have accepted foreign passports or were born abroad, while still wanting to keep their Ukrainian identity, which is impossible until the bill is signed into law. It also targets those who had to flee the country without proper documentation after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began.
There was no time at all to gather our possessions. There was constant shelling. My home at that moment was totally engulfed by fire, and what we managed to take is all that I have with me here. That's it. No chance to take documents, electronics, or anything at all.
Not everyone, however, will be allowed to participate in the new system, as holding a Russian passport or serving in the Russian armed forces would result in a loss of one's Ukrainian citizenship permanently. The bill will also make it possible for foreigners to obtain a Ukrainian passport, though Kyiv still has to determine which countries' citizens will be granted that opportunity. While the list is still incomplete, citizens of Russia and countries which don't recognize Ukraine's territorial integrity have already been ruled out.
And now let's zone in on the explaining portion of our show. Since 1991, Ukraine's population has shrunk from around 52 million to just 32 million people. This massive demographic decline can be chalked up to Ukrainians leaving their homeland en masse, be it for better wages or due to the breakout of an all-out war.
While Ukraine's population has been shrinking for the last 3 decades, the Ukrainian diaspora has been growing equally quickly. Data shows that as many as 25 million Ukrainians live outside of their home country. Over 5 million of them fled Ukraine, seeking refuge in the European Union after Russia's 2022 launch of its full-scale invasion of the country. Half of them are women, and around a third are children. Countries that have taken in the most Ukrainian refugees include Poland, Germany, and the Czech Republic, with Poland alone sheltering over 994,000 under protection. While Europe remains the most popular destination for Ukrainians who had to leave their homes behind to avoid Russia's senseless war, millions more have settled beyond Europe. Canada and the United States host large, historic Ukrainian communities, with over 1.3 million people of Ukrainian descent in Canada alone. Brazil and Argentina also have long-standing Ukrainian populations, dating back to 19th and 20th century migration waves. While these migration routes often followed deep cultural and familial ties, in recent years war has become the primary motivator for migrating to other countries.
And now let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Ukraine is on the brink of enacting a landmark bill that would, for the first time in its history, allow dual citizenship, a strategic move aimed at encouraging millions of Ukrainians living abroad to return home. And with approximately 25 million Ukrainians currently residing outside the country, and nearly equaling the 32 million living within its border, the demographic and economic stakes are high. The bill, already passed by the Ukrainian parliament and expected to be signed into law by President Volodymyr Zelensky, is seen as a vital step in national recovery and unity. Driven by the ongoing impact of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and a full-scale invasion in 2022, the legislation seeks to reconnect Ukraine with its vast diaspora. The policy allows Ukrainians who adopted foreign citizenship soften out a necessity to reclaim their Ukrainian identity without renouncing their new nationalities. It also targets foreign nationals with ties to Ukraine, offering them a legal path to dual citizenship, excluding citizens from countries that deny Ukraine's territorial integrity, such as Russia. Officials emphasize the economic potential of returning citizens. Ukrainians have proven valuable to European labor markets, and Kyiv hopes to offer comparable opportunities domestically through reforms and job creation. The government believes that while it may not compel refugees to return, peace and improved living conditions will draw many back. The initiative underscores Ukraine's long-term vision, rebuilding not just its infrastructure, but its population identity and economic future. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Andreas Umland from the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Thanks for having me again.
So today we're trying to examine Ukraine's decision to allow dual citizenship. Before we dive into Ukraine's incentives to doing so, can you help us break down what's the advantage and disadvantage of doing so?
So far, Ukraine had a rather restrictive law on that, allowing officially only one citizenship. And so if you took over another citizenship, as many Ukrainians have done, you had to, at least formally, that was not always in practice the case, renounce your Ukrainian citizenship. So it was an either-or situation. What happened often, though, was that people sort of went around this rule and actually had then several passports, which was at least partially, I would say, illegal. And then there is also another category of people, Ukrainians born not in Ukraine, in the large Ukrainian diaspora, that would have perhaps liked to have also Ukrainian citizenship, but could not obtain it because they did not want to give away their own, so to say, citizenship of the country where they were born. And that was until recently the situation. And of course, since the large-scale invasion, this situation has aggravated further because there are now millions of people who have fled Ukraine and are living in various countries of the world and partly already obtaining their certain rights and even citizenship. And therefore, this new law is very welcome.
All right, so it does seem like Ukraine is worried that perhaps after the war is over, a lot of these Ukrainians wouldn't want to return. Do you think that this change will be substantial enough to actually incentivize some Ukrainians into going back? Or do you think with the economic situation they are enjoying abroad, this perhaps will be less effective?
We will see. I can't predict on that. My feeling is that this will not have actually that much of an effect on the number of people who will return. It's rather something that will make it easier for Ukrainians who want to return and do not lose perhaps, or want to move to Ukraine, who have never lived in Ukraine, but perhaps members of the diaspora or other people who have moved to Ukraine, myself included. And they would then have the opportunity to also gain Ukrainian citizenship without losing their original citizenship. And of course, it's a big advantage then also for those who can, for several reasons, not return, and they will perhaps stay in the countries to which they have now fled, and this way they can preserve the link to Ukraine. In the future, I think there's yet another aspect of this law, which means that I think in the future, Ukraine will have more immigrants, first of all, from the post-Soviet area, perhaps from Central Asia, from the Caucasus. And then if there are then these immigrants and they stay longer, they may also want to get Ukrainian citizenship without losing their original citizenship. So I think this new flexibility now with this new law will make this process of attracting immigrants to Ukraine easier. they can easily then become, after a certain while, Ukrainian citizens. They have to learn Ukrainian and have to pass an examination, but they don't have to give away their old citizenship. So I think that's a strategic decision, and I think it's mainly a constatation of a fact. It's something that all these processes are happening, have been happening, and will be happening, and this law makes these processes more smooth.
Right, but on the other side of the coin, is there going to be any unintended adverse effect of perhaps seeing that now Ukrainians can get dual citizenship, and more people are willing to leave the country or try to immigrate elsewhere, knowing that at least they don't have to forfeit their original Ukrainian citizenship?
Yeah, I don't think that plays that much of a role. I think that those people who want to leave, they will leave, and then they would probably be also ready to renounce their Ukrainian citizenship. And moreover, there was, as I mentioned, there were many people who actually did not observe the law, and it was sort of not this violation of the previous law that allowed only one citizenship was not it was not implemented very consistently, let's put it that way. So I don't think that this new flexibility will make it actually sort of easier, or it will not have an effect actually on outmigration. So this outmigration is happening anyway, and the people who want to leave, they leave anyway. But this way, at least you can preserve the link that they have to Ukraine with Ukraine. And often these people who have left Ukraine and perhaps have left for Ukraine forever, they then become sort of informal ambassadors of Ukraine in their new host countries.
Now, we're looking at the Ukrainian demographic, and some numbers put it at quite alarming drop since 1991. Ukrainians went from 52 million people to just 32. Do you think that there's, outside of this, there's more drive to try to increase the population, or do you think this is going to be a downward trend?
Yes, I think the trend is going to continue downward. We have this same trend actually in countries that are in peace, including also in Poland and in most countries. There are a few exceptions, but this is an all-European trend. And in Ukraine, of course, the war and the after effects of the war have rapidly increased this depopulation of Ukraine. So I think Ukraine will have, it's a very large country. It's the largest by territory, the largest only European country. Ukraine will have no choice but to try attracting immigrants. And this law, I think, will then have a positive effect, because the immigrants will not be put under pressure to renounce their previous citizenship if they want to become indeed Ukrainian citizens. There's going to be a lot of labor, a lot of workplaces in Ukraine, especially after a ceasefire starts, and then Ukraine will have to face that. I think the major instrument with which to integrate these new Ukrainians into Ukrainian societies are going to be language courses to teach immigrants the Ukrainian language, and then have them also pass an examination. And then I think that we've already seen this in the internet, that when non-Ukrainians learn Ukrainian, the Ukrainian language, independently from where they come from, they are very much respected by Ukrainian society. And so that is, I think, the way to go, and then to increase again the population.
Right. Another statistic that I do find quite interesting, the fact that Ukraine has 32 million people within its border right now. There's actually 25 million outside. Do you think that with Ukrainians moving out and the need to attract more immigrants into the country, this dual citizenship bill that has just passed is actually more of an attempt at attracting more immigrants back, or, I mean, Ukrainians to come back, or to attract immigrants from other countries coming into Ukraine?
Yes, both of it. And the Ukrainians who have left now Ukraine, they will have to make a decision whether they will stay outside Ukraine. And I see that I'm currently here in Germany. I see the people who have fled the country, especially families with small children. The children have started to go to school, and my suspicion is that many of them will actually stay because they become integrated with every additional month. The children become sort of not just integrated, but even assimilated into German society, and then many of them will stay. And some will return. There will also perhaps be people from the diaspora who have already citizenship in another country who will return. But my suspicion is that this number may not be that large because many of the Ukrainians that are now living outside Ukraine, they live in rich countries in Europe or in Northern America, and that many of them will return is, for me, unlikely. But there is a chance to attract immigrants from, let's be frank, poorer countries in Africa, in Asia above all, and then this citizenship law can help to make them a part of Ukrainian society.
All right, thank you so much for your input and insight, breaking all of this down. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on Eastern Express. And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Following a massive Russian missile and drone strike on Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia continues stalling peace efforts and instead choosing to kill. Now, according to data from the UN, at least 13,000 civilians have died since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Zelensky's remarks follow claims from Russian President Vladimir Putin that he's ready to find a solution to the war he himself started. At the same time, Putin laid out his demands of Ukraine before he agrees to hold peace talks with his Ukrainian counterpart. In the eyes of the Russian president, Ukraine would have to stop its mobilization of troops, accept neutrality, renounce NATO membership, give up control of certain territories, and halt Western arms shipments to Kyiv. Despite the UN keeping count, Putin also denies targeting civilian infrastructure during his almost daily strikes on Ukrainian cities. The latest such attack on Kyiv, the deadliest of its kind this year, killed at least 28 and wounded another 130 people. Fed up with trying to get Russia to participate in the peace process, Zelensky once again called on the international community to pressure Putin to finally come to the negotiating table, adding that Ukraine has already agreed to a ceasefire deal proposed by the US around 100 days ago.
Argentinian authorities have uncovered a Russian spy network nicknamed The Company. The network, helmed by 2 Russian nationals, is believed to have been tasked with promoting Moscow's interests through disinformation campaigns.
Lev Konstantinovich Andriashvili and his wife, Irina Yakovenko, both based in Argentina, reportedly influenced local NGOs, foundations, and public organizations to align with Moscow's interests. The country's intelligence has tied the operation to Kremlin's infamous Lakta project, a broader Russian campaign previously involved in election interference across the US, EU, and Ukraine, whose funding originated from the late Wagner PMC chief Yevgeny Prigozhin. While Argentinian authorities have confirmed that arrests were made in connection to the discovery of the operation's existence, they did not specify whether Andriashvili or Yakovenko were the ones put behind bars. Experts say the investigation highlights how Russia takes advantage of limited counterintelligence in South America, using civilian covers and easily obtained local identities to influence public opinion of the Kremlin's dealings.
Finland is officially withdrawing from the Ottawa Treaty, which forbids the use of anti-personnel landmines. The decision cemented with a favorable parliamentary vote. Helsinki is following in the footsteps of the Baltic states, like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, which have also already approved similar exits from the treaty.
Helsinki's reasoning behind the move is lack of restraint on the side of Russia, which doesn't shy away from using anti-personnel landmines. Despite being denounced by human rights organizations and Western governments, Moscow's forces have been using such mines extensively since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. After the non-negotiable 6-month withdrawal notification period, Finland plans to stockpile mines and allow controlled exports of the explosives. A recent Finnish defense report outlined Russia as the biggest and most immediate threat to the country, as well as NATO's eastern flank. Just like the other countries bordering Russia, Poland has also announced it will withdraw from the Ottawa Treaty in the near future in a move aimed at bolstering the security of the country's eastern border.
And that's all on this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.